So I'll get started. My name is Steph Peters, and I'm really glad that you're here joining me today to discuss this topic that is on many people's minds, parenting in a pandemic. Hi, Tamara, great to see you. Feel free when people join to introduce yourself in the chat and also ask questions along the way if you'd like. So I'm Steph Peters. I'm the founder and CEO of Goaldriven, a company that aims to ensure that all parents can access the science-backed skills that can improve their child's behaviors through our web and mobile-friendly programs. I also have a background in designing solutions to make healthcare cost less and be better, and translating what works in person to digital health. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our introduction. So we'll go through some of the bigger things to focus on, some specific strategies, and where to get more support if needed. I'll mostly be speaking through the lens of helping parents of children who are elementary school age, but all parents and friends of parents are, of course, welcome to join. For parents, managing parenting in this year has been very overwhelming, to say the least. I saw this quote somewhere on the internet a few months ago and thought that it really captured how the boundaries of our lives have broken down. We are parenting, we are teaching, we are working, all in the same place. And what initially seemed like a benefit to us has turned into a burden. The most important thing, if you remember nothing else about this talk, I really want you to know that you are not alone. If this year feels impossible and tough and overwhelming, that is because it is. And even if your parent friends aren't talking about how hard it is beyond just a joke that's like, wow, it still feels like March, everyone is still feeling the burden. You are not alone. So on the slide here, these are the things that you already know are occurring. I am sharing them to validate that these have been written about. Other people know that they are happening. Parents share that they are struggling to balance both work and school. They are isolated from their normal social networks. The things that we used to use to help us cope with parenting have been taken away from us. We have few or no or less than none opportunities for self-care or leisure. Those that have been fortunate enough to live near family are no longer able to do so because of what is required of social distancing. And decision fatigue is something that's also happening, which is the concept of exhaustion and stress after making decisions. We've had months of reassessing the risk and benefit of daily choices. Do you send your kids to school? How do you navigate remote learning? What do you do about visiting grandparents? All of these decisions create a sense of exhaustion. So no wonder parents are having a hard time. Our environment has set you up for an impossible situation. And again, you are not alone. I've heard this reframed somewhere, and I think it can help us shift our mindset and expectations. We are not just parenting at home. We are parenting in a pandemic, and we happen to be at home. So when there's more time requirements than time that we have, and more resources needed than resources exist, how do we really help ourselves parent in a pandemic? And the answer is the same to the question, how do you climb a really high mountain? And that is one step at a time. Taking small steps to reach a goal is a very common strategy. We use it a lot in psychology. We use it to help kids, and we use it in health psychology. For example, people who haven't been running, but who would like to start running 5 miles, it's helpful to start with the smallest doable step. And this isn't usually running a mile or two. It's usually something like put your running shoes at the front door. And the next day, put your running shoes on. And the day after that, go out and walk 5 minutes, and so on. Whereas big jumps forward towards goals, like running a few miles, can overwhelm us. Like, really don't have time to do that today. Or they can also make us less likely to be able to repeat them. Like, that was fine running those few miles once, but now I can't physically move. Small baby steps can help us moving forward. So today we'll talk about how to implement baby steps for both you and your child toward the goal of making this year easier for you both. So I mentioned that we are going to talk about big stuff. So what is the big stuff? The big stuff is taking care of yourself and taking care and strengthening the parent-child relationship. So what does taking care of yourself in a pandemic mean? There's a saying psychologists often use, and it doesn't feel like the most relevant strategy these days, but you need to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on your child. You have to take care of yourself in order to do the very hard work that parenting requires. And let's be real, parents have less than zero time to spend on themselves. And what time they do have, they are spending taking care of their kids. So what do we do? I highlighted the word goal-driven here to call out the difference between goal-driven and state-driven activities. State-driven activities are a reaction. We are acting in response to our environment. And this happens all the time in pandemic parenting. However, many days can go by and we may not be able to do anything that's really rewarding to ourselves. We plan to do them, but we're not able to. Goal-driven activities are planning and then doing the activities that are rewarding. We plan to do them, they have positive consequences in our lives. And if you're stuck thinking about what can you do for a goal-driven activity, I've listed out some topics here that can help categorize so it can make it easier to choose. So social is one, things that are accomplishment is one, things that are relaxing, and then finally things related to your identity or things that bring you closer to your values. So our next question is, how do you do these activities when you don't have time? Now I'm going to bring up baby steps again here. This is going to be a helpful tool in being able to engage in shortened time activities that can bring you a reward. So everybody here, reflect for a moment. Imagine what is one topic or activity that you would like to do. And now what is the smallest possible step that you can take to move forward towards that goal? For example, for me, drinking coffee is a very relaxing ritual that I love. And some days it doesn't feel like I can drink my coffee and spend the time thinking to myself that I'd like to. If I don't have time for that, maybe I can take a few moments just to feel how warm the coffee cup is. So even though it's a very small step, it's still moving forward. So think to yourself, what is the absolute most doable, achievable step that you can take towards taking care of yourself tomorrow? It can be really helpful to get ideas from others. So if you want to share your idea in chat, that would be really helpful to the other parents who are listening. So we're also more likely to complete the goals that we schedule and plan for in advance. So think for a moment, exactly when are you going to complete this step tomorrow? Calendar reminders, sticky notes, partners and friends willing to ask us if we follow through can all help us stay on track. So let's talk about the next really important thing to focus on, which is strengthening our, great one. I'm going to pause, daily time outside. That's a really good one. So let's talk about the next important thing to focus on, which is spending time with our kids. This picture right here is from the Minnesota State Fair. Even though we don't have our occasions and celebrations as usual this year, we still have many opportunities to strengthen the parent-child relationship, even if it doesn't feel like it. So special one-on-one time is another strategy that psychologists recommend for ensuring that you have a strong foundation for the hard work of parenting. Special one-on-one time is different from the other 24 hours a day that you are spending around your kids right now. So what's different? Special time is child-led. Your child gets to choose the activity and be the leader. They get to pick what you do, assuming, of course, that it's safe to do so. You will want to pick a time when your phone or other distractions are away from you and you get to focus all your attention on your child. You'll want to show enthusiasm And you can do this by repeating back what your child says. So what your child says. So if they say something like, I did this on my own, you can say, you did this on your own. Or commenting like a sportscaster, like, oh my gosh, look at all the colors in that drawing and how they go one after the other. And remember, this special time is a time for play. And it's a break from your role as a teacher. And I mean that now we're also officially teachers helping kids remote learn, but I mean that mostly in the informal sense that we take as parents, where we're correcting kids, or, this is how you figure skate, or this is the best way to stay on your bike without falling off. So take a break from that and really enjoy your time and get to play with your kid. And even though it may seem like special time isn't needed right now because we are around our kids so much, it's actually needed more than ever. It is like an extra nutrient, the focused child-led play where they know that they have their parents' full attention. It can fill their cup in a way that our day-to-day interactions with our kids often don't, unfortunately. And many parents set this time up by being limited by a timer. And I think that this is so smart because when the 5 minutes are up, you can say, oh, I would love to keep playing, but the timer, that's the rules of special time. So it can make it easy to end the time and transition back to what you were doing before. So back to baby steps. Again, you've had less than 0 time as a parent coming into this talk, and now I just told you that you need to take time for yourself, so you have even less time. But our stepped approach can keep you and your family moving forward. Psychologists say that 10 minutes of special time is probably better than 5, but 5 minutes is certainly better than none. So if all that you have is 2 minutes, then start with 2 minutes. Try to work yourself up to 5 minutes a day, somewhere in the current schedule and routine. And remember that time spent strengthening your relationship with your child is an investment. And that's because kids are less likely to do attention-seeking behaviors that are often through the behaviors that you want to see less when they know that they have their daily special time happening. So we talked about the big stuff. We talked about how you are not alone. You have to take care of yourself, try to strengthen the parent-child relationship. And now we are going to talk about some specific strategies that can help make it likely that you will see more of the behaviors that you want to see more of. So first, let's talk about setting up a schedule. Kids do great with a routine. And when you're planning your routine, remember that bedtimes, the time we go to bed, and waking up times should be the same every day. We've seen parents change this up a little bit because all of our routines feel different, but this is really important to try to keep consistent if you can. That's because if sleep is not consistent for any of us, we're not as well equipped to deal with the stressors of daily life. So, translation of that, if your kid is tired, you are going to see more of the behaviors that you don't want to be seeing. So it's important, even though we're at home and our routines are disrupted, that we create a consistent sleep schedule. And the same goes for meals. If we happen to be at home with our kids, the meal times can vary, but trying to keep meal times the same can be really helpful. And the same for homework and free time. It can be helpful to schedule the same times for when homework is done and free time every day. These can go on the schedule so kids know what to expect. Many parents find it very helpful to create visual schedules. These are schedules that can be weekly and then also a daily schedule. Sharing clearly what things are expected of your kids can make it much more likely that these things actually happen. So I wanted to share, this is a strategy that some psychologists, colleagues of mine shared with me. When you're creating a schedule, a helpful strategy can be to help kids understand what they need to do, what needs to be done, and what they want to do. You can create on a piece of paper, just like this picture, 2 different columns, and write down what do we need to do today and what do we want to do today. After you're done writing this column, you can create the daily schedule. And the daily schedule should stagger the need to do with the want to do. And this is a really clever strategy because you will be able to say when-then statements, which we'll talk about in a little bit, to say, when you've done your Zoom math, then you can play with your toys outside, which can be a really powerful way to encourage kids to do the behaviors that maybe they want to do less, but they need to do. And for elementary school age kids, it's really great to have them have choices about their schedule whenever they can. Usually picking 3 to 4 items. So for here on the want to do, maybe they would have 3 or 4 choices that they could pick one per day. 3 to 4 is great. More than that can sometimes be overwhelming. So we talked about schedule. Let's talk about setting up the physical environment for success. You may have heard that it's recommended that kids have a separate learning, eating, sleeping space. If you don't have that availability in your home, you can set that up with either chairs or some kind of boundary to separate those things from happening. So I want to talk a little bit more about this. When kids enter school, they have a cue that it is time to behave in a certain way. It's how they experience school. So it's like they see, like in this picture, the chairs or the desk or the other kids. There's certain things they hear, there's certain things they smell. And we all learn to associate our environment with things that happen. So for example, how many of you know the meaning of this shape? And I promise that you didn't know that this image meant the Twin Cities Startup Week when you were born. You learned it over time. Your kids can also relearn cues for their learning. So some parents mark off areas in their home environment, different areas for learning, Zoom calls and studying just with chairs or tape or some sort of signal that this is what this space is designed for. And then kids can start to associate those cues just like they did with their school environment. So next, I'm going to talk about some of the behavior basics. So we're going to be talking a little bit about how parents can see more of the behaviors that they want to see more of. The skills I'm going to talk about are from an approach called parent training. This approach is science-backed and it teaches parents the skills that can improve their child's behavior. I think it's important to share that there are many different skills that are taught in these programs and they're typically used together to see changes. So I won't be able to give a full comprehensive overview of all the skills, but I'm just introducing a few of the concepts. And just so you know, parent training is typically delivered by child psychologists, or there are also educational materials like what we do at Wellru, and coaches that can teach parents the basics of these skills. So as a parent, you can help guide your child's behaviors, which is great news. Behaviors are learned. That means that they can also be unlearned and they can be relearned. And that goes for even in these challenging times. So we'll talk a little bit more about the skills that can help you see more of the behaviors that you want to see. So as humans, we all do what is rewarding for us to do. And by rewards, I don't mean money and candy, although those do work. I mean, rewarding in the broader sense. It is rewarding to feel loved and connected with our family. It is rewarding to feel proud of ourselves. We are all driven by that force, and we're often not even thinking about what we're doing in those terms, but those forces are powerful. And as a parent or caregiver, your attention is a very powerful reward. It can be used to increase behaviors that you want to see and decrease behaviors that you want to see less. So think about it like if your attention is a light or a flashlight, you want to be flashing on and shining on the behaviors that you'd like to see increase. And just as a heads up, both positive and negative attention increases behaviors. So praise and reward, and also things like arguing with your child. So let's talk about how to supercharge your attention. The first way we do this is through praise, specifically something called labeled praise. This is powerful because it teaches your child exactly what they need to do to get more praise, which remember is very rewarding for them. So you want it to be immediate, right after. So I'm telling you, I love what you did and you're doing it right now. So you know what I'm talking about and you know how to do it again. Be specific. Great job could mean anything. Great job sitting quietly on the couch gives kids clues about what they could be doing again to get more praise. And finally, you want to praise a lot more than we typically do as parents. And remember, anything that you want to see more of, which includes the absence of something you don't like so much, is something you want to praise. So for example, our first example up here, great job sitting quietly. That's not something we necessarily think to praise, but it's really important if we want to see that behavior more. We sometimes use the term in psychology, catching your child being good. And that's a great way of describing, you really have to search out to describe these positive behavior, these behaviors you want to see more. And here we are at baby steps again. So it's unlikely that, especially now, as routines are disrupted and kids are adjusting to a new way of doing school, so it's unlikely that you're going to see exactly what you want to be seeing right away. But you can baby step your praise. So if you really want your child to be sitting for 30 minutes on a Zoom and they are not there, praise it 5 minutes. Then praise it 10 minutes. You can praise in a baby step way, and it will pull your child towards the behavior that you want to see. So now we're going to talk more about supercharging our prompts. So when I talk about prompts, I mean the cues, that the signal to your child that it's time to do a behavior. Prompts, we want to be very clear with our expectations about what we want our child to do. The first thing on here is explain the details. We want to be very clear. So be nice could mean anything. Keep your hands to yourself. That's a little more clear. Next, we want to break it down. Parents often communicate prompts like we're speaking to adults, but kids are much better at following directions when they're single step. And honestly, adults probably are too. So instead of listing all the things a child needs to do, like I need you to go upstairs into your closet, grab your coat, get your laundry, come down, eat breakfast, and then we gotta go. Think about breaking it down as much as you can. Bring your coat downstairs. Can you do your prompt in 10 words or less? And I didn't put this on here, but it's very important when we're prompting our child afterwards. We definitely want to praise right away. Again, we're trying to increase the behaviors that we want to see more. So if your child brings their coat downstairs, say, great job bringing your coat downstairs. Now brush your teeth. Thank you. That's probably not the best example. There's probably a kinder way to say that. But making sure we're praising after the prompt can increase that behavior. And next, anchoring it to a behavior or event. So for elementary school age kids, time can be a tough way to anchor prompts. For example, in 5 minutes, we'll do this. In 10 minutes, we'll do this. A much more helpful way to approach prompts is to anchor it to an event or something happening. So when Elsa is done singing this song, then we will turn off the show. And it can be helpful to get eye contact and a nod from your kids to make sure that they can hear you. And the last one on here is very important, follow through. So if you say a prompt like the example I just shared, you know, Elsa, we're going to turn off the show after Elsa's done singing, or Elsa's going to sing one more time and then we'll turn off the show. Make sure the show gets turned off. If your kids have a feeling or know that maybe 1 out of 100 times you're not going to follow through, it's going to make things very, very hard and make it less likely that these prompts are powerful. So really the way you supercharge these prompts is by following through on what you're going to be saying. Okay. The next thing we'll talk about is when-then statements, which I mentioned earlier. So I think when-then statements are amazing ways of both telling your child exactly what you want them to do. So here's your clue of what behavior you need to do, and here's your reward you're going to get afterwards. Again, rewards aren't just candy and treats or money. They are things that are rewarding to your child. And we know that people like to do things that they're rewarded for. So it's really a supercharged way of telling a child, this is what you need to do, and this is the reason that you're going to want to do it. It's just like staggering that information that you had on the schedule that we talked about. it can really guide your child toward the behavior you want to see without that resistance that we often see happen. So you're using your child's environment to try to make it more likely that they'll do behaviors. These are some examples for the current time. So when you finish 10 math problems, you can go outside. When teeth are brushed, we will pick out a bedtime story to read. I think the difference between saying something like, when you're done playing your toys, we're going to go brush teeth, and when you brush your teeth, you get to pick out a story, is a very big difference in how likely it is your child's going to be able to complete those tasks. Parents typically see soon in how quickly the child completes the behavior when it's done as a when-then statement. So in review, this is a really tough time for parents and kids, and I want you to know that you are not alone. Remember to focus on the big stuff first. Please take care of yourself. I know it's usually the last thing parents think of, but you have to take care of yourself if you're going to do the hard work of parenting. And times right now it's a very hard time for parenting. Don't expect all changes to happen at once. And also know, I've put here, make a plan for not addressing every behavior. We're around our kids a lot more, so we're seeing a lot more behaviors. Some of them are annoying. It's just what happens when we're around people all the time. We can't parent everything. So pick the things that you want to change, like keep your hands to yourself, that kind of stuff. And things that maybe don't need to change but are a little irritating, make a plan for yourself for how can you take care of yourself in that moment. Maybe distracting, or some parents find deep breathing helpful. Remember, baby steps, small steps forward can get you to where you want to be. And remember, praising and attention is your friend. Make sure that you're praising everything you want to see that your kids are doing. So where to go next? Wellru.org. On there, I have, if you're interested in trying out our educational website, it's no cost to parents. You're welcome to sign up to be on the wait list. We'd love to have you join. I want to say that, Wellru is tools and education. It's not a replacement for therapy. Usually my benchmark for if people benefit for therapy is if there's either significant impairment, like you're not able to do the things you need to do, or there's significant distress. And that goes for either kids or families together. So I have some resources on wellru.org under the resources tab of clinics that are offering virtual therapy right now, if families are interested in that. Your pediatrician or primary care provider is also a great place to ask for referrals. And I really appreciate everyone spending time here today to talk about pandemic parenting. We have a few minutes for questions if anyone has any, and I can stop sharing my screen so we can talk. Thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to join audio, video, or type it in the chat. Or you can keep saying what things you're going to do to take care of yourself, because that's my priority for everyone listening. Yes, I am on LinkedIn. Let me put my LinkedIn link here. And you can also contact me at this email. I'm glad it was helpful. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, John. And I'll stay on for a few more minutes in case anyone has questions. If anyone's having difficulty with getting their kids to wear a mask or encouraging their kids to wear masks, I can also talk about how we can use baby steps to encourage kids to do that for longer periods of time. So I'll stay on for a few minutes just in case anyone needs anything. I hope it was helpful. Thanks. That's a great question, Neil. There's I think a lot of things that are different developmentally. And that's probably a whole other topic. I think some of the things are the same, you know, making sure you're taking care of yourself. And then when you're taking care of that parent-child time, what I've heard it, you know, for teenagers, it's helpful to be available. You know, they're not going to want to necessarily choose something to play or an activity to play together. But they do appreciate having time where they get full attention and they're listened to. So that can look like you can talk about anything you want to talk about. And with parents of kids with teens, I think checking in is great. You don't need to check in and ask if they want to talk all the time. This can be the case right now when we're all, you know, wanting to make sure our kids are okay all the time because they're gaining their independence. But I think having that time to connect is still important. And that's a great question. I think, you know, in terms of some other general strategies, what I can do is I can talk with some of my colleagues who are experts in working with middle school aged kids and teens, and we can put a few recommendations on WellRu's website. So let me write that down so I don't forget, but we can do that. So we can add that to our list if that's helpful. It's a great question. Thanks, Neil. I think I'm going to hop off so people can enjoy the rest of what's going on at Startup Week, Startup Month now. If you have any questions, you do have my LinkedIn and my email. Feel free to contact me. And I hope everyone continues to take care of themselves. And I hope you enjoy the rest of today's programming on healthcare. Thanks, everybody.